We're ready. Welcome everyone to Après, Midi. I'd like to introduce Annabel Sims, who was born in England but of Hungarian parentage. Right, both of them?
Yes.
Okay.
They met in England.
Ah, very cool. Okay, and she has lived in Paris since 1991, only 3 years before I got here. I got here in 94. She arrived from London on a year's sabbatical from her job as a college lecturer in English and never left. You know, that's exactly what happened to me. A year and that's it. You all know this, right?
Yes.
You come for a year, you're never leaving? Okay. Her interest in the region around Paris dates from that first year when she began to spend her Sundays exploring the nearest countryside accessible by train from Paris while teaching English during the week. Armed only with a Michelin green guide, remember those? And the suburban train map, she gradually discovered small medieval towns and villages, country restaurants, hidden chateaux and museums, parks, forests, canals and rivers, and worked out the most enjoyable ways of accessing them by train and on foot. Finally, realizing that this gentle provincial world less than an hour from Paris by train was unknown to many Parisians, let alone foreign visitors, she decided to write a guide to it herself. She illustrated her selection of favorites from the scores of places she had discovered with her own photos and maps based on her experience of visiting them on foot. An hour from Paris. Who has a book who can hold one up? Oh, wait. There you go. An hour from Paris. Her guide to 20 little-known day trips around an hour from Paris by train first appeared in 2002 and is in its third edition.
Fourth edition next year.
A what?
Yeah, I found that out yesterday.
What?
Fourth edition
A
will
fourth
be
edition next year.
in 2024.
Wow. Okay. Then, half hour from Paris, 10 more day trips around half an hour from Paris by train was first published in 2018. The enlarged, updated second edition, 10 more trips an hour from Paris, in full color and containing 12...
it's not called that.
What's it called?
It's called Half an Hour from Paris.
Right, but this, 10 more trips...
This is a mistake.
Oh,
And
never,
I did
never mind.
But I can tell you how the mistake must have crept in, because whoever wrote this went to my website. And on my website, there is a little section called 10 more trips an hour from Paris.
And it says it was published in July 2023.
No. This was published in 2018.
18.
10 More Trips an Hour from Paris has not been published. It's a collection of 10 trips which didn't go into this book, right? It's the other half. There were 10 trips in this and I had 10 over. And the 10 over I put online and sell them direct from the website as PDFs with the map. So you can buy them separately for €3 each, or you can buy the full set for €13.
Thank you for correcting.
Yeah, this was what the publisher didn't want to publish. He asked for a sequel to An Hour from Paris, and I wrote it.
Well, guess what?
And then he said, it's not going to sell and I can't afford to do it. And I thought, damn you, I've spent 2 years producing 20 more, lovingly researching 20 more trips. Then I had a brainwave and said, how about I take the shorter train trips, and luckily there are 10, and we call it Half an Hour from Paris. And he said, brilliant, that'll sell.
And it has.
And I was left with 10 other trips.
Have you noticed that all the books are gone, sweetheart? Okay.
Yeah.
And
No, I
now
haven't.
you can get started
you'll
now.
find 10 more trips an hour from Paris on my website, the ones the publisher didn't want, or he didn't want 20. But I'm very fond of some of those trips.
Okay. If you don't mind going close up there
Yeah.
so that you're on camera. Very good, but not in front of the image. Come, yeah. Good. Perfect. Okay. You're on.
May I speak now?
Yes.
Well, I've got a feeling that most of you know about the book already, so I don't really need to give you any more introductions than the ones you've had already. I was going to tell you why I wrote it, but I think it's pretty obvious why I wrote it. I couldn't find what I was looking for. And I arrived from London, where lots of people have gardens, including me, and I was living in a studio on the Ile Saint-Louis, which I took for 6 months. And it's up 5 flights of stairs, and it has a window box looking south, and that's my garden. I'm still there, by the way. But I was
5 flights up?
I was I was desperate to get into the countryside and see some green. I wasn't used to living without a garden. So I used my carte orange, if some of you might remember that. It was the forerunner of the Navigo. And because I had it for my teaching, which tended to be around Paris, really boring places to go to, but it meant the company was paying for the carte orange, so I had 5 zones. And I started using it at weekends to explore for pleasure and to get into some green. And I didn't know where to go, so I used the Michelin Green Guide, which of course is written for cars. So it was good for ideas, and then I found out the hard way by trying to get there by train, whether it was feasible or not. And it took, I did this for years before I realized that I had the makings of a book, that there was no such book on the market and nobody else had done the work. You know, the footwork.
I'll bet there still isn't, right?
No, there still isn't.
No, it's only because now that you've done them, nobody else needs to do them.
The book isn't actually that well known. It's very niche. It's known mainly to Americans. And I was not aiming at Americans because I hardly knew any. I was aiming at expatriates from Britain, like me, living in Paris. Well, they're a small bunch. The Americans are much more numerous and much more reliable. They actually buy books. And not just the ones in Paris, the ones in America who come over regularly, year after year, and know Paris very well. And they would like to explore a bit further, but they don't know how to do it or where to go. So they are actually 2/3 of the readers. The publisher thought that this was a huge risk. Nobody predicted that it would go into what will be 4 editions soon, or that it would have a little offshoot, half an hour from Paris, years later, and that would be reprinted. So there's huge competition from the internet now. So guidebooks are a thing of the past. I mean, written hard copy guidebooks like this. You know, most publishers of that have gone out of business or put stuff online. And the few that are left like this are the niche products. So in fact, it's people like you. You are my niche. Right, the criteria were very simple. The place had to be accessible by train. So I got the ideas from the Michelin Guide, but had to ditch quite a few of them because they were complicated by train with a lot of walking. So what's in the book is it's the cream of what survived from the selections. I'd say for every 10 trips I've done, 9 do not get published. Because they're just not good enough. I enjoy doing them. I enjoy the exploring. But writing them up is another matter. So it was years before I actually thought of writing them up. So, has to be accessible, and it follows from what I just said, it also has to be interesting. It's got to be worth going to by train. So the interest can be historical, cultural. So I consider a guinguette culturally interesting. It's where people go and dance by the river. And I haven't seen that outside France. Every country's got its own little cultural oddities. I love English pubs. There's no such thing here. but I love French guinguettes, and that you don't find them outside France. So I call that culture, as well as historic interest, or modern architecture. Some of it can be interesting. In fact, I was interested in a lot of things, and I couldn't find a guidebook that catered for someone like me. Quite apart from the practical thing about it had to have a train station, it had to, what else? Well, that was the first thing, but it had to have more than one reason to go. I'm interested in wildflowers. I'm interested in animals, wild animals. It makes my day if I see a certain bird or a fox. And I'm interested in composers, artists, writers, all of whom had résidence secondaire in the Ile-de-France. So there's a lot of that historic sort of stuff to sniff out, depending on how keen you are on the writer, the artist, or the musician. So plenty of that. There were plenty of chateaux, and I liked the little market towns, which turned out nearly always to have been started life probably as a Roman villa. The ruins of that became a farm, then it became a settlement, then it became a village, then it developed some little local industry like making millstones. I'm thinking of La Ferté-sous-Jouarre, I'll talk about later. Something like that, and it reaches a kind of peak of prosperity in that case. In the case of La Ferté-sous-Jouarre in the 19th century. And then it declines because nobody's buying millstones anymore, and then it becomes a kind of, not suburb, but a place in the Ile-de-France that's very accessible by train because they've got an excellent network, but has this small town feel. It's still got its...
So like Provence, like France?
It feels like, well, not just Provence.
Provins, Provence.
Both of those, it feels provincial in the English sense of the term. These feel like provincial towns. They're bigger than villages, but in England you wouldn't call that a town. It's a kind of glorified village with an ancient church, a marketplace, etc. And these days you'll find there will be a very large immigrant population, which I've never seen anyone write about or mention. You hear a lot about riots in the banlieue. No journalist, as far as I know, has ever written about successful integration in the Ile-de-France. And I've seen it. And I've worked out what the successful places have in common. They're all old. They have a historic centre. They are beautiful. There will be a chateau or a river or a canal or an ancient church, or all three or four, and a marketplace, and they'll have kept that. But they've got the modern infrastructure so that people are looked after. There's proper housing. There's good transport. And of course it's a lot cheaper than Paris, as you will know, Adrian, because I discovered Adrian had written about two places I knew but haven't written about. And everything she said was true.
Which?
Issy-les-Moulineaux.
Issy-les-Moulineaux.
That's one, and I can't remember the other.
Ivry.
No, there's a third.
But no, because I just wrote about the banlieue because we filmed the House Hunters there.
It's very interesting what you wrote, and I feel like an expert on the banlieue, on the bits that don't make the papers, because it's not bad news, it's good news. And to me, visiting only on Sundays, I must admit, it's only Sundays because I hate Sundays in Paris, because I don't have a family here, and it's just full of people strolling up and down, shuffling about with their family. It drives me mad, which is why I started going out by train on Sundays, and I still go out on Sundays by train because I do hate Sundays, and I turn them into an adventure. And of course the trains are empty because those commuter trains, that's why the network is so good. It was built for commuters. All the commuters are in Paris. shuffling about on the Ile Saint-Louis where I live. In fact, it's unspeakable. It's full of Parisians and people from the Ile-de-France, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. You know the way people do when they're not in a hurry. I'm on an empty suburban train going the other way to where they have come from. And they tend to know their own bit of the Ile-de-France, but they don't tend to know the other bits. So these people are quite ignorant, in a way, of what's around them, and Parisians are totally ignorant of what's just beyond Paris. And I did pick up that attitude very quickly, within 2 years of arriving here.
One of the areas I wrote about was Saint-Cloud, and I know that you...
Saint-Cloud,
Saint-Cloud, and you love the park to Saint-Cloud. I know. You've written about that.
Yes, that's in half an hour from Paris. Well, not many people bother to research the banlieue. That's why I was interested in what you said. And I'm interested in the towns that work. And the ones that work are those that have kept the historic centre. They haven't thrown away their soul. But they are part of modern France, and they have proper train services, and they have proper social services. And you don't hear about riots there. And they've got a large immigrant population, and I know about this because I go on a Sunday. The only things that are open on Sunday are run by immigrants.
True.
The cafe will be run by the Chinese, the traditional French cafe run by Chinese. There'll be a strong Portuguese element, so little Portuguese restaurants. There'll be a Moroccan corner shop. I mean, you're all nodding, so you've seen this. That would be a kind of composite picture of small towns in the Ile-de-France. And what I find attractive is that they've kept their soul. But you can get to them, and nobody knows about them, thank God. So you won't meet Parisians, and you won't meet other Anglophones. You won't meet each other. No, it has happened, but you'd be a minority. In fact, you'd be exotic. I've had little boys following us in the street in one of these places because they heard us talking. I was with an American friend. They're fascinated. Good morning, Mrs. Good morning, sir. This was what they'd been taught, I suppose, is polite to say in English. But I felt like a circus come to town, you know, with these kids, and realised, yeah, we are exotic to them. And in Paris, you're just banal. You know, you're one of millions of visitors, and you know that by the way waiters treat you. This is not the case in the Ile-de-France, though people will suddenly stop talking when you walk in some of these.
You want me to put
places.
up the map of the Ile-de-France?
Not
yet?
Not yet, because
Okay.
I'm still on my
Okay.
tiny first
Okay, never
bit.
mind.
I'm nearly there.
I'm jumping.
I'll tell you when. Yeah, what I wanted, coming back to my criteria, had to be accessible, had to be interesting, it had to be authentic, which meant had to be off the tourist routes. I did not want to meet crowds. I have plenty of that on the Ile Saint-Louis, especially on a Sunday, and I live in the heart of Paris, so I don't want pavements and I don't want to hear visiting voices. I want to watch the locals in their habitat and without being too obvious about it. And I don't go around with a camera. And they're always amazed when they realise we're on foot, that we came by train, because every visitor they've ever met is in a car. Added value was the last thing, but I've already touched on that. If you're bothering to get the train, the place should have something more than one reason for you to go. It should have at least two, if not three. So it could be a writer's country house, it could be a chateau, it could be an abbey, it could be a concert, it could be a ganguette. There'd be some specific reason for choosing it, but then it's got to have more. I prefer not to write about places that have no cafes. And I'm afraid there are places that have no cafes anymore. So they are not in the book. Ideally, it should have an additional walk, optional, so you can do the trip without missing the whole point and not do the walk if you're not up to it or don't feel like it. But if you do feel like it, the added value is there will be a country walk, preferably by a river or a canal, because I'm very keen on water. And essentially, this is not negotiable. It will take you to another station, so that you do not have to do what you do in a car, which is do a circular walk, so you can get back to where you left the car. No need. You haven't got a car, you've got an excellent train network, so you might as well go to a place, see what it's got to offer, and then go off on a little walk if you feel like it. I say little because nothing's longer than 5 kilometres. I've done much longer walks, but I haven't put them in the book. And it will end at another station.
But that's the advantage of the public transportation.
Yeah, exactly.
You're really more free
Yeah.
than if you have a car that you have to go back to.
I'm busy spelling out the obvious because it isn't obvious to a lot of people. And they also think, ooh, public transport, judging by their own country, it'll be dirty, it'll be dangerous, it'll be unreliable. Wrong, wrong, and wrong. So I'm coming to that now. So I've already mentioned where the ideas came from. The Michelin Green Guide for cars, the SNCF train map, so I put the two together, friends, students. I was teaching English for a long time, and they were adult students, and French, they very often lived in the Ile-de-France. So some of my best places came from people who lived there. Following rivers and stations that are on rivers, exploring, and once at least, no more times than that, but a memorable time, getting lost and going off the map completely, not realising I'd gone off the map, and discovering a wonderful guinguette by the river, very close to Paris, and bang opposite a station. But I didn't know about this station. I was walking in the wrong direction. I thought I was walking towards Paris. I was walking away from Paris, and that's how I found this place. So getting lost can be quite fruitful. Right. So what I actually found was that, like most expatriates and visitors, I came with ideas based on where I came from. So I thought that the area around Paris would be like the area around London. Next map, please.
Map.
And I couldn't be more wrong.
It's as good as we're going to get, okay?
All right. All you need to do, you can't read it, but the details are at the beginning of the book, so you will be able to read it there. And this is for the new edition, so there are 12 places in red. But the main thing is you can see that the centre is densely populated, or the centre of the Ile-de-France here. And Paris, you have to look quite hard for it.
That's right.
It's that. I think so.
Yeah, right in the center.
There. That's all it is. It's tiny. For such a tiny place, it's incredibly densely populated. The most dense in Europe. It's third world density where we are now, as you no doubt feel. 2 million people in Paris, and it's a tiny area. But the Ile-de-France is enormous. So if that's Paris, this is La Petite Couronne, the 30 kilometres outside Paris. That's a radius of about 30 kilometres. You can see it's brown. That means population, densely populated. And the rest, look, it's green and sort of cream. forest, agriculture, parks, little towns. But you can see how empty it is relative to the centre. It's like a fried egg. With the yolk is Paris, and the white, which is enormous, is the Ile-de-France. But if you look at the train map covers all of that pretty extensively. And most places, however remote, will have 2 trains an hour, even on Sunday. This was not the case when I first wrote An Hour from Paris. There were some places where they had 2 trains a day on Sunday, which I didn't write about, but it's well, I should go back, I think, because things will have changed. So it's the opposite of London in every respect, because London is more like a scrambled egg. The yolk and the white are mixed up, so the population density is about the same everywhere in central London and beyond central London, because everyone's got a garden, practically. And the whole of Greater London is, I actually didn't believe this when I read it, and I triple checked it. The Ile-de-France is 10 times bigger than Greater London. I know it sounds incredible. So I suppose, I don't know how many Londoners there are here.
I just want you to be closer, that's all.
Any Londoners? None? Okay, I won't go on about Paris would fit into the Circle Line. If any of you know the...
Would fit into the Circle Line?
Yeah.
Yeah?
The tube map of London. It's a yellow circle. It's called the Circle Line. Paris fits into that. And then the rest of the London Underground map looks impressive and does go out into the countryside, but nothing like to the extent that the Ile-de-France network does. So I didn't know any of this, and I discovered it slowly. Right. I've already said about the transport. Ah, yes. Next, please. Yeah. Yeah. This is how good the train service is, in that this tells you how many minutes the place is in the book. I'm talking exclusively now about this book, Half an Hour from Paris. But for the other one, it would be similar for about half the trips. And nothing's much more than an hour in An Hour from Paris. And nothing's much more than half an hour in Half an Hour from Paris. But I don't know if you can read this, but 42 La Ferté-sous-Jouarre is minutes. It's 42 minutes from Gare de l'Est. The shortest one, can anyone tell me what the shortest one is?
Well, it's hard to see from here.
You need the book.
Parc de la Poudrerie, number 21.
It's this one.
Neuilly-sur-Marne.
15 minutes. And in An Hour from Paris, in spite of the title, there is a place that I think is even closer than that, 13 minutes from Gare de Lyon. Imagine the equivalent of that in New York or London. You'd have to travel for nearly 2 hours to get really out. The other things that I found were the survival of authentic countryside. This meant a lot to me. Next, please. Does anyone know what this flower is called?
Sorry, I'm trying to get you both on camera. Okay, thank you.
All right, the white flower. Does anyone know? No. It's rare. It grows in England, but I've only seen it twice, and I've seen it quite a lot in the Ile-de-France. And you can see how small it is compared to the speedwell next to it, which most people would recognise. It's a tiny little blue flower. It's called Star of Bethlehem.
Oh.
It's a beautiful name, beautiful plant, and this sort of thing gives me a buzz. So you'll find that mentioned in the text, that kind of thing. You can ignore it if you're not interested, but that's one of the reasons I want to get out of Paris. I want to see Star of Bethlehem. I want to see Lily of the Valley. I want to see bluebells. I want to see primroses. And I don't want to see them in a shop window. I want to see them growing wild. Same with animals. I know that there are lynx in the Ile-de-France because I've seen an exhibition in one of the places in the book aimed at children, and it showed the footprints and the droppings of various wild animals that you might come across in the Ile-de-France. I was fascinated because it was a well done little exhibition, and it showed the footprints of a lynx, and I thought, well, the chances of coming across a lynx are remote. Well, 3 weeks ago, I'm with friends well outside the Ile-de-France, just on the border with l'Aisne, that is in the north, Champagne country, and we're doing a walk for the first time, and it's muddy, and well, it had been muddy, there were footprints, and one of them started taking photos. She took photos of various footprints, and when she got home she looked them up. Blow me down. Lynx, wild boar, deer, and dog.
Wow.
So yeah, I haven't ever actually seen a lynx or even wild boar. I have seen a grass snake, and I was terrified. And the French people I was with just laughed. And they said, well, it was harmless. It was this thick. And it was scared of me. It moved very fast. But that's what I wasn't expecting to find in the Ile-de-France, and what I did find. And things, certain flowers and birds, insects, animals are disappearing in Britain because it's so densely populated as a country. Mm-hmm. And it's half the size of France, the same population. But I can see them here. So that's another reason I like to get the train and get out.
Next, shall I go to the next slide?
Yes. That's the countryside, and that is a country walk from the little town that I mentioned earlier, La Ferté-sous-Jouarre. The little town, its height, can you see? Mm-hmm. Oh wait, the little town is over here, invisible. That's the one that manufactured millstones and now is clearly in decline. I mean, the tourist office is closed down. That's always a sign. And then it's a 4-kilometre walk from there to what I'd come to see, thank you Michelin, and it was the Merovingian tombs in Jouarre. And Jouarre, I think, goes back to Roman times, but it already had a famous abbey in the 7th century. Can you believe this? 7th century AD. There's an abbey that they built there. It's still there. It's still got nuns in it. And at the time, it was the leading houses of France. The women went there because that was a career, after all, an alternative to marriage. So the abbey was there before the town, which is 4 kilometres away. The walk is fascinating. That's the walk. And next, please, when you get there and you get to this crypt, this is, so it's two crypts together under an old church, but the crypts are much older than the church. They're the tombs of the founders of the abbey, so we're talking 7th century AD, but the pillars are actually nicked from a Roman temple and from Roman villas which were there. So they just used what was lying around to construct the crypt. So these are Roman. Here you can't see, but in the book you'd be able to make out the detail. There are people praying on this tomb with their hands raised like this, as they do in the Coptic church, so in the Middle East. It shows how undark the Dark Ages actually were. Because I'd always thought of the Dark Ages as, dark. But no, this was cosmopolitan, this was international. And luckily, that tomb has a bit that you can't see that is outside the crypt, and it was covered in sand and silt for over 1,000 years, and it has only been excavated and made visible in the last 20 or 30 years. There is a picture of it in the book, and it shows Christ in majesty. That's the other end of that tomb. And there are not processions of people going to La Ferté-sous-Jouarre to see this. Michelin mentions it as sort of interest. And I mean, that just thrilled me. But the walk also was another reason for doing it. But that's the sort of thing that's sort of hidden in the Ile-de-France. And they're really bad at publicity, I suppose, which is good because it means there are not hordes of people queuing up to see any of this. You'll be the only ones. And next, please. This is a little town called Lagny-sur-Marne, of course on the railway line. This is a cafe, and this is Les Toilettes in the cafe.
No.
The cafe, I didn't need to go to Les Toilettes the first 2 or 3 times I went to the cafe, so I didn't notice anything. Then I read on an obscure website that the cafe is constructed partly out of a church which they had demolished before the revolution, just before. So this is the very cavalier attitude that they have in the Ile-de-France to their history. They're very, very blasé about it. So in the toilette of this cafe, which was created out of a church, I realised that this wash basin here, the toilette are actually there. You come in here, that would have been the lavabo for the priest in the original church, you know, where the priest ceremoniously washes his hands. They cleverly put a modern tap in here. There's the mirror, there's a window, and you can see the light. And here, nobody's bothered to take him away, is the founding saint of the town, Saint Fulcy, who's an Irish monk, came to Lagny, which was the ruins of a Roman villa, in the 7th century from Ireland, struck with his staff, which you can see in the carving, ding, and a magical stream appeared. So he said, we will build here. They did build there, and it became, it was a very important town with a huge church. And Saint Fulcy, spelt differently depending on which church you're looking at, which cafe, and his name is actually there. I know it's there, but you can't see it's there. You won't be able to see. You can see in the book, it's F-U-R-C-I on that carving. And God knows how old the carving is, but the church was 12th century, and it could well have been built on the ruins of a previous church. I wouldn't be surprised. And nobody's bothered with him. He's just there in Les Toilettes. The tourist office don't know a thing about it, and they're not interested because they don't think this would interest visitors.
It's in your book, though, right?
It's in my book. And in a way, I'm quite glad that it stayed a niche book. You don't have hordes of people rushing to Lagny-sur-Marne.
Down to the toilet.
And going to Les Toilettes. It's a nice cafe in its own right. Right, where are we? Oh, yes. Next, please. This is Lagny-sur-Marne. The cafe that you've just seen Les Toilettes of is there. It's next door to Café de l'Abbaye. L'Abbaye has now become the town hall. You can see a drawbridge, not a drawbridge, an archway here. That used to be part of the ramparts. You go in, and there, can you see the French flag? Just about.
All right. What town
The
is
tricolour,
that?
the tricolour is the town hall. And over here, actually, I think I will try and find you the relevant bit in the book and read it to you, because
Oh, great. What town is that?
Lagny-sur-Marne. It's a commuter
Lagny-sur-Marne.
town. Nobody bothers with it. I'm glad to say. Lagny-sur-Marne. Now I'm testing how easy it is to find things here. Page 39. All right, over that arch, which led through, what did I say? 39?
39.
39.
Uh-huh.
Ah. It can't be.
Oh, she said 59?
I must have done.
Picture's on 62.
You've got
Well
a lot
done,
of
well
helpers
done.
here. Right.
I found it. The relevant quote is on page 61, and what's carved here, which you really can't see in this slide, it says, Unité, indivisibilité de la République, liberté, égalité, fraternité ou la mort. It sort of sends a shiver down your spine. And nobody gives it a glance.
It's just part of the scenery.
Part of the scenery. It's the Café Saint-Forcy, named after the church Saint-Forcy, named after the founder who struck the ground with his staff and found the stream, has had a market for, well, since about 700 AD. That's the market. I don't know if you can see, there's the awning of it, and it's grouped around a fountain, and the fountain is, guess what, the famous source that Saint-Forcy found. I think the story of the miracle must be a bit of myth, but the fountain is not. It's still providing the water for a lavoir, which is no longer in use, but you know what lavoirs are.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you walk around the Ile-de-France, or even anywhere in
The original
provincial
washing
France.
The original washing machine.
Yes, you find lavoirs. Well, the magical stream is providing the water for that. The fountain is in the middle of the marketplace. There is an astonishingly huge church, a stone's throw away, which was going to extend to the marketplace, but it's not so much they ran out of money. Lagny became less important with the rise of Paris. So it's, and various marriages, so that the counts of Champagne, who were the sort of owners of all this, became less important. They married into the French royal family, and the French royal family just took over. Paris took over. These towns shrank to being little market towns. But they had been very important.
It looks like there's a property for sale. I see a sign in the window.
These are good places to buy. And I don't know if you can see what I was saying about immigrant population. There's a Portuguese place down there. Not everybody's an immigrant, but what strikes me is how everybody is absorbed into the fabric. They're all getting on. There is another cafe up here. Was the only thing open on Sunday, and we ordered wine there, and it was cold, which doesn't happen often. And I explained to the barmaid, who was also the owner, and she was Muslim, so she couldn't test it. But so a customer next to her said, "I'll test it." And I thought, this is how things ought to be. She was deeply embarrassed, by the way, because he confirmed it was corked and insisted on giving us a free replacement and more.
The town looks awfully busy, though.
It's
I
market day,
Yeah.
Sunday. Sunday is
So they
market
come
day.
from a lot of the other surrounding
and
areas.
that's a tradition that's been
Right.
going on for over 1,000 years. It's still a market town, and you can see it's alive.
Yeah.
Because some of them are very sad and picture postcard pretty and dead. So don't write about those.
Should I go to the next slide?
Yes. Well, what has changed?
Ganget.
Yes, I'm coming to that. What has changed since 2002? You can guess. The first edition of the book, or the first edition of this, to the second edition of this. So it's between 2002 and 2023. So it's 21 years. More standardization, fewer working class cafes and restaurants, better transport, much better transport. It was already good compared to London. London's not as bad as it used to be, I'm glad to say. It's crept up a bit, but Paris is now much, much better. So lots of trains and goes further out. Information available online, which was not the case before, including maps and GPS. That wasn't available in the past. It's a mixed blessing. I don't like walking around with my head in my phone, so I still use paper maps, or I prepare a journey on a paper map and use the GPS to check. What is astonishing is the continuity over it's what has not changed. This is a place I was at on Sunday, so what's today, Tuesday? It's called Chez Fifi.
Chez Fifi?
Yes. It is exactly what it looks like. I took that picture years ago, but this Sunday I can tell you it was the same. It's by the Marne, but it's not one of the better known gangettes, so it's not like Chez Gégène, which is packed. This is actually packed, but it's packed with locals. There's no such thing as a menu in English. Forget that. And people, you know what gangettes are, so
Dance halls, basically. Dance, like a dance hall.
by water. It's always by a river. And the reason was to avoid tax on wine. Wine coming into the capital would be taxed. So gangettes sprang up on rivers around Paris before you get into Paris proper and have to pay the tax. So they were selling cheap wine. With drinking a lot of cheap wine comes the urge to dance. And they traditionally sell traditional food, and especially la petite friture, which is tiny river fish fried like whitebait.
Smelt?
Yes, I've forgotten the word. It's my favourite. That's what they had the other day. So that's still going strong. As you can see, it's resolutely stuck in the 60s. All right, I've nearly finished. You'll be glad to know.
Should I go to the next one?
Should you go to the next one? Yes. It's what's new in this new edition. It's 2 new places I've added. Parc Saint-Cloud is one, and that's the Grande Cascade. So it's all that's left of the chateau. The chateau burnt down during the Franco-Prussian War. And the Prussians, who were in occupation at the time, didn't do anything to put out the fire. They were not displeased. It was a French shell that fell into the Chateau Park, set fire to it, and the Prussians let it burn. And the French state now owns the park, and they left it there as a ruin for a long time because it was a sad reminder of defeat. There's nothing left of it now except that and the huge park. Yes, I feel the same about wanting to take clothes off. Right, so that's one new place, and the other new place, next slide, is Brunois, which is a suburb, and I'd never been there. and I forget what, oh, it was a friend who found this walk. And the reason we wanted to do the walk by a little river called the Yare, which we didn't know much about, was that there is a menhir, or 2 or 3 menhirs, so prehistoric standing stones. That was the reason we went, but we made a detour to the town centre. Sure enough, there's the 12th century church, etc. Then we followed the river to, the magic words being another station. And that was hard. It was hard to find a walk that was clear. There was no clear walk. I had to more or less research that from scratch and from different maps. But this is what we passed en route. It's an 18th century bridge. And at the other end, next please, we found the Maison de Gustave Caillebotte, yeah, the painter, who I knew nothing about, by the way, but I'm sure some of you do. That was his family's country house, and that's a painting by him of the country house 100 years ago and more. And I'm pleased to tell you that apart from the clothes, nothing's changed. Except, yes, the park is now open to the public. It's a public park. The River Yare runs through it. You can visit the house, but you can visit the park for free. And the walk to it I just found fascinating. And not obvious at all. It was like following a treasure trail, trying to find the walk. You know, the pedestrian-friendly way of following the river. And what did I see there? A heron.
Are the flowers the same? I mean, do they look similar?
Yes, it's very well maintained.
Really?
Where is this again?
It'll come to me. Brunois in the book, because Brunois is the first station, but it's on the RERD, I think. And then you end up here at, you walk to a station called Yères, Y-E-R-R-E-S, which is named after the river. This house is built next to the river. And Caillebotte has lots of paintings of the river. I became quite interested in Caillebotte after that. So those two are the new additions to the book. And I am still discovering new places. So a few weeks ago, someone at the American Library told me that you can buy champagne not far from, at the edge of the Ile-de-France, accessible by train. And I said, oh yes, that rings a bell. I did that 15 years ago, and I didn't think much of the champagne. She said, well, there are lots of Maison de Champagne, and you can just cross the bridge, cross the river, the Marne, to the station. I thought it's worth a try, and we went. But I did a lot of research before that, because she said it's a 20-minute hike from the Maison de Champagne that she went to the station. That's not good enough. I'm not going to spend an hour in the train for a 20-minute walk. So I researched, and I discovered that you go to the next station, which is outside the Ile-de-France. Luckily, I didn't know that. So all of us had Navigo, and all of us were breaking the rules without realizing it, because there's nobody at this station, of course. And we didn't know it was outside the zone. Got out, walked along the Marne, I'd found online, this is where online is useful, Ganguette, open on Sunday. These are the magic words. I can't tell you how many places are not open on Sunday. This one was, it's not called Chez Fifi, it's just called Le Bac, meaning the ferry, because I think there had been a ferry there. It's nothing special, the food, but I could have kissed them because they're open. And it's authentic, it's not a rip-off, and there are only locals there, and they found our accents fascinating. Then we went inland through another little village with the church that was open, 12th century, and then we went across country, next please, here. The Champagne vineyards are just below. They're where I'm standing now. I did this trip twice, so this is the second visit. The first visit, I didn't know about this walk, and we did another through vineyards, and we nicked the grapes, and they were delicious. But 3 weeks later, when I did this walk, the grapes had all withered. So if you want to taste the grapes from the vineyard, you have to go probably in September, October, but not later. Anyway, this was a better path, and this is the one where the friend saw the footprints, the lynx, the wild boar, the deer, and the dog. And next. This, you won't believe this coincidence, I had trouble finding Maison de Champagne open on Sunday. There are lots of them around there, but almost none of them are open on Sunday. So I rang around and spoke to someone called Natalie, and she said she'd be open. Oh, she'd stay open for us, not a problem. On the way to this, on this second visit, because it takes usually several visits, certainly more than one, to decide if a place is worth writing about. Another friend, there were 4 of us, fished out his Le Monde magazine. This is the picture, that's why it's crumpled. It was from his magazine. He said, "Is the person you spoke to in the Maison de Champagne, is she called Natalie?" I said, "Well, yes, but how did you know?" He said, "Well, is this her?" I said, "I wouldn't know, I've never met her." I met her daughter, and we got the champagne after the wonderful walk. I then researched her for this presentation and discovered this is part of a huge publicity campaign run by some marketing agence de pub, and they chose Natalie from all the people who'd applied, and she said, "I don't fit the profile. You want younger people or older, experienced people. I'm in my 40s. They said, no, you're what we want." She said she doesn't look like this at all. I don't know, but I met her daughter, and I've seen pictures of her in this article where she said, "This isn't me," and I recognized someone who could be the mother of that daughter, who looked much more homely, much cozier, much more approachable. So they've done her up for the advertising. But I can tell you, having tried the champagne, it is excellent. And guess how much it was?
How much?
How much do you think?
A glass or
A
a
bottle.
bottle?
We each bought a bottle. From the producer, a bottle of champagne. Not a well-known house.
I wouldn't have an idea.
In Croûte-sur-Marne,
I wouldn't have a clue.
€15.
15?
Yeah.
15 euros?
Yes. And we each got one, and then we trotted along the river, the Marne, to the station at Nantes-Sassy, which is in the Ile-de-France. No problem. But it was twilight by then, so like, scampering along in the dusk with these bottles. And I was afraid it would take us longer, but actually it really did take 20 minutes. Trains there are only once an hour. But we're practically outside the Ile-de-France. But the station near here is just in the Ile-de-France.
Yeah, you'd be on the edge of you'd be on the edge of the
Yes,
Champagne
it
region,
is.
right?
That's exactly it.
Right.
And
Well, she looks like someone you don't want to mess with, okay?
I can tell you, she was very nice on the phone. She
I'm
said,
sure.
"I won't be." I didn't know. I hadn't seen this picture.
Well, this is, you see, it's about character, having character.
This
so
is
that's why
to do
she's,
with brut et minéral.
Yeah, right.
Well, I don't know what the point of the thing she's carrying is.
Yeah, what
Sledgehammer?
like, that's why I'm saying I'm not sure that if I would not mess with her, okay?
Well, I can tell you that we just bought the cheapest. It was brut.
It was good.
It's
right?
very good.
Okay.
Worth the trip. But for me, it was the walk and the ganguette. Well, it's not a true ganguette. Nobody was dancing there. It's a restaurant, which I think had been a ganguette, and they'd kept the title. And I've nearly finished. You'll be glad to know. I've got tips for planning a day trip.
Is that? I think that's the next slide, right?
That will be the last one. The last one is my recommended walks for winter, because that's where we are, from both books, but particularly from this one. But there's no need to copy it all down, because
It's in
Adrian
the book.
says,
It's in the book, right?
no.
What, this?
No, not this. I wrote that for you. That's for today. It's not in the book.
Okay, this is for us. You
This
sent
is
me
for
that.
you.
Okay.
The bullet points have disappeared in the reformatting, but from half an hour from Paris, all you need to know is Neuilly-sur-Marne, Château de Malmaison, Parc Saint-Cloud, Château de Vincennes. Those would be the ones I'd recommend for winter, because it's either a short walk or there is shelter of some kind included in the trip. And in an hour from Paris, Villeneuve-Triage, Conflans-Sainte-Honorine, Château des Coins, and Parc de Sceaux. So you've got some place to hide from the cold if it's really cold, and you've got an optional walk. The other trips in here are very much things you'd want to do when it's sunny, or at least they're very outdoorsy, the others. And the last thing I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, I'll put this information in the report so that it'll be
Would
on
you?
the site. Yeah,
That
of
would be a
course,
help.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the past I would just have put that on a handout.
Well,
But
okay.
that seems
it'll
so
be on the
old-fashioned.
site.
And the last thing was, actually, I could wait for you to ask me questions, and then I don't. It was tips for when you're planning a day trip.
Well,
So I just reel them
sure.
off.
Yeah.
Don't trust official information, especially online information. It's often out of date. Always phone if you can. That I phoned Natalie to make sure that the Maison de Champagne would actually be open. And no, it wasn't going to be open, but she said, we'll stay open for you. You don't get that by just going online. It was good for getting the phone number. If you get lost, ask a local. Don't Google. And just not noticing anything around you, and people love to help. Well, I find they do. French people like being asked, and you're conforming to every stereotype of the tourist, the Anglophone who's lost. They'll be charmed. Be open to changing your plans, and follow your nose. Don't have a plan that's so rigid that you can't possibly go down an interesting passageway. Change the plan completely. And some of the best things I've discovered have been because I got lost, or asked, or changed my mind. If you're travelling on a Sunday to some remote place and you haven't done your homework, and sometimes even if you have, take a sandwich. Just in case there's
Take
no
something.
cafe open. That there may well be a cafe, but not open on a Sunday. The last thing, the more you know about the history of a place, the more interesting it will be. That's it. No, thank you. Can I sit down now? Oh, that's better.
as long as I can adjust this. Okay. Okay, questions?
This goes. I've borrowed this from Dodie at the back, and the reason is there's only one copy. Yeah, I think I've covered so much ground there can't be any questions.
What's your favorite walk? What's your favorite outing?
I should have seen that one coming, and I'm always taken by surprise when I'm asked. And the reason is I haven't got a favourite. Not anymore. I'm discovering new things all the time, and I like the exploring, not the going back. I go back because I have to check. And for a long time, I did have a favourite, but things there have changed so much. That was Moret-sur-Loing. It's in an hour from Paris. So I know I don't have one. I've got a general picture of what I'd like. Accessible, water, decent cafe or restaurant, and something of historic interest, and something to discover that most people don't know about, like the face of Christ in Majesty that had been covered up for over 1,000 years. That kind of thing.
So what's a new one that you can tell us about that's not in
I've
your
just
books?
told you. I've just told
those
you.
are the new ones? Okay.
Croûte-sur-Marne. It's not in any book.
Oh.
I haven't written about it at all.
Oh.
I've only been twice.
Do you
It
go
needs-
every Sunday?
Yes, but to different places. And then, you know, there are sort of research walks that I have to do to update the book. And there are exploring walks that I do for the hell of it. And those are where the book came from. And those are the things that I like doing. So Croûte-sur-Marne was an explore walk. But once you start to write about it, it gets set in stone. And then you have to go back and check it. And it stays good value. And it's good for anyone who hasn't done it before. But for me, it's lost its charm.
How many times do you have to go back in order to before you can put it in the book?
I don't like to tell you. It's because
10? Yeah.
I'm capable of it. I realise this is very sort of perfectionist.
But that's why the book is good. That's why the books are good, because you can count on them to be correct.
It can never be 100% correct because things keep changing. So by the time it's been published and it's got into the bookshops and you've bought it, some things are bound to have changed. The answer to that is to go to my website and go to updates. I do post updates, but no one can stay on top of all of the changes all of the time. So that's where you come in. People write to me and tell me about things that have changed. It's really helpful. And in that last slide, my email is there. Please send feedback.
Right.
It's really useful. I don't do all the updates myself. Some of it's based
there you
on
go.
what people have written and told me.
Okay, well, it's easy. It's annabelle.sims@gmail.com.
That's the one.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I've got some questions because I don't know who buys my book. I've got a shrewd guess, judging from the people who write and the people I meet at events like this. I think they are expatriates, some of them, and some of them are regular visitors. Am I right? And I never get feedback about certain places. I can tell you the ones I do get feedback about. They're the better known ones, like Chantilly, Rambouillet, Senlis. But obscure places, I can reel off now the ones I don't get feedback about, in case there's anyone here who can tell me. Yeah, Montmorency. Has anyone been there? It's the house of Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Oh.
That was the reason in the first place. Écouen, I think people have been to. Yeah, Chantilly, Royaumont, they do that. L'Usage? Oh, good. Don't get feedback about that.
Quite a good time.
Senlis I do. Crécy-la-Chapelle. Anyone? Yeah?
We've
Ah.
been reading your books for forever.
It sounds like he should answer all the questions there. La Ferté-Milan. Yes? It's just you.
Yeah.
Provins.
Yeah.
Villeneuve-Triage. Villeneuve-Triage, anyone? It's the Ganguette Auvergnat. That's the one that I found by getting lost. It's the closest to Paris. 13 minutes,
That's great.
and it's on top of the station.
So it's easy.
Oh, I'm surprised. Moray-sur-Loing,
Yes.
Rambouillet,
Not yet.
Montfort-l'Amaury. The reason for that one is Ravel, the musician, his house. Poissy,
They've done
So is this
all of
one.
them.
Conflans-Sainte-Honorine, Parc de Sceaux. Well, I've had feedback about that. Ile du Martin Pêcheur. Oh, that's so easy. It's a Ganguette on the Marne. Very easy to get to. Champigny. On an island. The second one on an island. Créteil. Dodi, where are you? You told me you went to Créteil. No, it wasn't you. You didn't speak much. It was
Dale.
yes. Has anyone else been to Créteil? But you lot have
It's
just
the
been
end.
everywhere.
Isn't it the end of the metro line?
Yeah.
It's the end of the metro.
That it's very easy. Where are we? We're almost coming to the end. Champs-sur-Marne? No?
The chocolate factory?
Chateau Champs-sur-Marne. And the chocolate factory.
Yeah.
Meunier Chocolate
I think it was the
Factory.
first one we did.
Saint-Germain-en-Laye? Right. Well, that's just 20. Now we have 12 more. Parc de la Poudrerie. Well, if you want to see red squirrels, I recommend
red
it.
Squirrels?
Red squirrels. They've died out in England. You can see them in Scotland, rarely, but only in Scotland. I've seen quite a few in the Ile-de-France. Parc de la Poudrerie was a gunpowder factory. So it was making gunpowder. It's now a public park. It's very weird. Strongly recommend. La Ferté-sous-Jouarre I've talked about. That's the millstone town and the walk to the abbey with the crypt, with the Roman pillars, and the founders of the abbey buried in those stone coffins. The same sculptor who did the tombstones at Saint-Denis, the Basilique Saint-Denis. That's 13th century. So there's different periods, of course, in the crypt. Meaux, has anyone been there? Nobody goes to Meaux. Oh, you have? To the cathedral? Have you been on the walk?
You mean your walk? No.
It's 10 kilometres. It's 10 kilometres. It's the longest one. It's down the Canal de Chalifert from Meaux to another station at Esply. You won't meet anyone on that, except I found two very eccentric cafes. Lagny, I've talked about. Neuilly-sur-Marne is chez Fifi, the Ganguette. Chateau de Vincennes, completely overlooked by most Parisians and a lot of
It's so close.
tourists. It's too obvious. People don't go.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Prunois, I've just talked about that. Hyères. You start at Prunois and end at Hyères, Maison Caillebotte. Follow the river Hyères. Igny, oh dear, I've forgotten this one. Igny, you follow the Bièvre, River Bièvre, the one that runs underground in Paris. it's underground now. It
The
was
river
covered.
that runs underground in Paris.
Did you not know? The Bièvre. It flows into the Seine near Saint-Michel. It was covered up in the 19th century because it was a health hazard. It was a sewer. And now they're talking about daylighting it, as they are in lots of other cities around the world, to combat global warming. It'll cost a fortune to do it.
To do what? To
Daylight it.
What does that mean?
Make it visible.
Oh,
Uncover it.
Uncover it?
Uncover it.
Is it under Rue Mazarine? There was a Rue Mazarine at one time was a
it's
canal.
under Rue de la Bièvre,
Oh,
where Mitterrand lived,
okay.
in the 5th.
Right.
It's also under the post office in the 5th.
And also near Italy, where that park
Yes,
is.
yes, it comes in from the south of Paris. I'm just fascinated by rivers, so I was trying to follow the Bièvre. Also, there's a lot more going on that walk, but I feel a certain fatigue creeping in, so I'm going to rush onto Parc Saint-Cloud. I've mentioned Marly-le-Roi, completely outdoor walk. Very. A friend told me about that. I would never have found it. Interesting. I recommend, but only when it's not cold. And lots of impressionist painters there. Parc de Bagatelle. A student told me about that. I didn't know about it. And in the Bois de Boulogne and the Iris Garden.
Chopin Festival.
Yes, and they.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's
And the roses.
the French know about it, but nobody else does.
Oh, I used to go every June to see the roses.
It's
The
the
rose
irises
garden.
I go for, and they only flower for 3 weeks. It's in the book. Malmaison,
I don't remember.
Malmaison,
Big rose garden. Big rose garden.
Napoleon and Josephine, and a good walk and a good brasserie. But that's, yeah, I think I've come to the end of it now. I've gone round, yeah.
But the same bus that you take to the Bagatelle is the one at the end of the line is Malmaison.
I never thought of that. Can I just,
Everywhere.
I'll just jot that down, because, no, that's worth knowing.
That's two.
No, it's,
244.
well, you can put some trips together, I've realised. And I do say where it can be done, but I didn't know about this. Can you repeat that information?
What would you,
The bus from Bagatelle,
the bus, yeah, it's actually from Portomayor. That's where it starts. It's a
yeah, all right.
metro, and then it's
244.
244 to
Two,
Malmaison.
yeah.
I never
I think
thought.
at the
well,
Malmaison Arroware.
well, it's easier by bus. That's why I say to go by bus, because you've got the least walking. So you get off at Chateau, I think it's called, the stop in Malmaison. But that makes sense, of course, because it's all west, and I know the west least, which is why I put in Parc Saint-Cloud, because I thought I'm a bit biased towards the north and the east, and should have a spread. Oof.
Well, any other questions?
Wow, that is very long. You should have stopped me.
Well, let's just say thank you. Thank you, Annabelle, so much. Do you have any books left?
I don't.
2 books left.
No, 3.
That's the second.
I think so. I'll just check. Yes, this one goes back to Dodie.
2 books left. First come, first serve.